Welcome to the Intrepid Soul Podcast, where we explore what it takes to build a human life that's congruent with your soul. I'm Katie Benway, a mystic, teacher, and author, here to walk with you through the wilds of the human experience as we get to know and get closer to the soul. Let's get curious, courageous, and conscious together. Hi there. Welcome to the end of season 1 of the Intrepid Soul Podcast. This episode for you today is a best of a revisiting of the 16, 17 plus episodes we've had during this inaugural run of the Intrepid Soul Podcast, and I hope you like it. This is a compilation of some of the most intriguing, aha-inducing, insightful, raw, honest, funny pieces of the conversations I've had over the course of these last couple of months. And before we sign off for season 1, I've got something special coming for you next week as a thank you for being with me. So on January 7th, a special podcast episode will drop, and this is a Word of the Year workshop ceremony. I'm going to lead you through a short conversation about the value and sacredness and power of establishing a Word of the Year. And then I will lead you through a guided journey to discover your Word of the Year for 2026. And I love doing these Word of the Year ceremonies. I love journeying through a period of time with a word at my side. It's so interesting how the word takes on different meanings and connotations, and my relationship with it unfolds and changes throughout the year. The word is both grounding and guiding. And so on Wednesday, January 7th, 2026, we will do this together. We'll have a little workshop and a ceremony. It'll be so lovely and so grounding and really empowering. A wonderful way to close our first season. So enjoy this best of episode, and then meet me back here next Wednesday for your Word of the Year workshop and ceremony. And then I'm going to take a little bit of time off to record a bunch of new episodes, and we will be back in the spring for season 2. All right, see you soon.
These deaths and rebirths are very monumental and pivotal in some ways in redirecting us or directing us on this journey home within to ourselves that we're on. So it's all necessary. It's all helpful. None of it's wasted. You know, where we get into this place where I wish I hadn't done that. Well, we did, and what did we learn from it? You know, and I don't see that as like, you know, this shameful thing of, you know, let's look at what we did. Let's look at how we experienced it. Let's look at how we felt. Let's look at what it did to us. Let's see what we learned. Let's see what we remembered, and let's go on, and let's not look at our experiences as good or bad, but beneficial to the purpose that we're here for. You know, they're beneficial.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think too, I mean, gosh, I found this in my own life and working with clients. The more you sort of do this, what we're talking about, i.e., accept that life is a series of deaths and rebirth, accept that what is not yours will fall away, allowing yourself to be transformed, embodying endurance, etc. It does get easier. I think the more you do it and sort of like work the program, so to speak, it becomes, quote, easier. I don't mean the events that trigger all of this are easy, but I will say from experience, my ability when I'm in that spiritual madness place, like I can't go back, but I'm not quite sure where I'm going. My stamina in that moment, my emotional and spiritual stamina, my ability to not abandon myself, my ability to not tell myself stories about how I am forsaken, right? Like that has grown, my flexibility, my resilience.
Yes.
And in that way, it becomes quote unquote easier. And maybe, you know, I don't know, maybe that's not the word I want. You know, there's less existential suffering that I bring upon myself, maybe. And I've gotten more curious and delighted about, whoa, this thing is being stripped away. Or I'm becoming a new version of myself. That old version of me is done and gone. I don't know yet fully who the next me is, but I am here for it. And I'm so glad at this point in my life to have built some of that stamina to know that there's something to be excited about when I feel I've gone through an existential death. There's something on the other side that is going to feel more grounding, more capacity building, more authentic, more dialed in, more easeful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if I've just been through something harrowing.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good, Katie.
So let's get to our first question. This is from Kelly. I always worried that my brother was angry at me. Because he died suddenly, we didn't get to talk or clear the air. And I feel so guilty and worried. But one night I had a dream, and in it, he and I were sitting in our childhood kitchen at the table talking. I don't recall everything that we said, but I remember the calm and the peace between us. And I remember he said, I am not holding a grudge. I'm not angry. I had to forgive myself, and you have to forgive yourself, and then we can be free. I want you to be free. I don't fully understand what he meant, but now instead of focusing on him being angry with me, I feel that I am able to feel him with me, and I feel him helping me. What do you think? And so when your brother crosses over and he says he had to forgive himself, that's absolutely right. And it's so wise. And I'm so proud of him. And it's such a comment on his congruence with his soul that he was able to understand that whatever he did in his human life, whatever harm he caused, that him forgiving himself was central to not getting stuck in that, to being part of healing, to being part of clearing it. And when he comes to you in this dream, which is exactly what he did, when he comes to you in this dream and says, you have to forgive yourself, he's inviting you to set yourself free. Because when you say, I'm so afraid he's angry, I'm worried, there's like a part of you that's arrested in this worry, right? Because you feel guilty, you feel bad, you feel like he's angry at you. And I don't know all the details of your relationship, but it sounds like there's pieces in this relationship you both have to own. It sounds like you were probably both right and wrong. And so instead of projecting out onto him your own shame and guilt about your part, what you can do as a self-aware, conscious person is say, I feel that shame and I feel that guilt. I understood why I acted the way I did, and I wish it was different. I'm going to own that. That's mine. That is mine. And yeah, your brother's not here for you to make amends with or to apologize to, but you can still apologize to him. And I know that there was a lot that got cleared up in this dream, but had I spoken with you before this dream happened, that's something that I would have advised you to do. I would have invited you, instead of being stuck in your own feeling that he was angry at you and projecting that out onto him, I would have advised you to stop projecting that onto him and say, where are you angry with yourself? Where do you feel guilty? Where do you feel ashamed or out of alignment with your truest self? And then write him a letter. Talk out loud to him. Go for a walk in the woods and telepathically talk to him. My favorite, talk out loud in the car. That is, by the way, where I do so much of my talking to my guides, is when I'm alone in the car. Apologize to your loved one. Take accountability. My gosh, that was mine. That was my part. I take that, right? Think energetically about that too. So when you're feeling guilty and ashamed, or like, oh, he must be angry at me because I did XYZ, like, think about that ball of energy that really just belongs to you. It was where you did harm. It was where you were out of line. And when you are saying, oh my gosh, she must be so angry at me, you're handing that ball of energy to him. But when you take responsibility for it, you make an amends, apologize, own it, you take that energy back. And that's where it belongs with you, because you're the only one who can heal this. And so had you not had this dream, I would have walked you through that process and invited you, go do some kind of honoring, acknowledgement, apology, some reckoning. Do that in nature. Do that prayerfully. Do that in tears. Do that celebrate. However you want to do this is fine. But that's you clearing the energy. That's you taking responsibility. That is you being conscious. This is mine. I take responsibility for it. I forgive myself for it. Or in taking responsibility, I begin to work with and begin to try to forgive myself for it. We know that that's hard, but it clears the space. And so when he says, and I'm quoting him here, I had to forgive myself and you have to forgive yourself, and then we can be free. I want you to be free. This is the tone and the kind of message I hear from the other side all the time. I want you to be free. What I hear in this email, something that you can't fast track, and it's this. When we lose someone that we love, when it's the kind of loss that changes our lives forever, right? Like when I think, for instance, about the loss of an elderly grandparent who lived a full life, who'd towards the end been sick and ill. And maybe there's a sense of like, wow, I'm really glad for her that grandma has passed. I think there's that kind of experience in grief, and a lot of us have that. And then there's the kind of grief experience where someone passes and it feels like a void and an interruption forever, whether they passed young or whether they were sick and this was untimely, or whether this was just someone who you lived so closely with that without them here, you have to discover a new way to be and operate. And I think that kind of grief journey is really unique and specific. And it's the kind of thing that leads you ultimately, and again, you cannot fast track this, but it leads you ultimately to a place where you become transformed. This kind of grief experience will ultimately lead you over time to a place where you say, I'm different. I know a level of loss and missing and longing and emptiness that has redefined me as a human being. And when you are able to feel that depth, what it will bring you to is a place where you begin to look around and find commensurate depth. So when you have this kind of loss and you're able to feel it and stay in it, it will carry you like a river, like floating on a river current. It will carry you to a place where you see the world through this depth, through this lens. So what I hear from people a lot when they have had a loss like this is that it reorders their life. That there are times they lose relationships because the relationships just don't feel as deep. And they will make new friendships or have new relationships with people who appreciate the kind of depth that's created in this kind of loss. And that isn't a value judgment. It just is. So when you have this kind of loss, there's like an intimacy and a vulnerability and a depth that is just in existence in you. And inevitably, you will be drawn to circumstances, people, environments where that depth, where there's space for that depth, where there's room for that depth. What also happens over time, I've discovered and witnessed, is that this kind of loss will bring you to a place where you're really curious about the bigger picture, about the meaning of life. I have often found that this kind of grief and loss brings people more deeply into their spirituality and their relationship with the spirit world, the unseen world, very naturally. And so when I read in this email, the more and more I experience life, I realize my mother was so ahead of her time. I believe my mom had a special gift of soul connection and that she passed it on to me. This is the kind of thing that some of us can only uncover in our grief. We learn about ourselves in this emptiness, in this loss, in the longing, and in the missing. We learn about the true depths of us, like the raw, vulnerable components and facets of ourselves. And I think that this is a beautiful gift from death. You don't ask for it. This is the gifts that come from this are not you wouldn't trade your loved one's life for these gifts, but this is what happens in life. There are tragedies and experiences that bring us to our knees that ultimately expand us and get us connected with the truest parts of ourselves, the more mystical parts of ourselves, the parts of ourselves that get transformed. And again, you wouldn't agree to trade that experience for what you get out of it. You wouldn't agree for that the loss of your loved one would grant you this. It just is what happens. So, Joe, could you talk to us a bit about what is trauma? How is it defined? Just give us that kind of basic starting place.
Yes. The best description of trauma I ever heard or learned, which is the one I use all the time, is something that is too much, too fast, or goes on for too long of a period of time. And it's not about the narrative or the event of what happened. It's how your body responds to that. So two people could experience the exact same very difficult event, and one person is able to cope with it in their own way and is fine. Or, they remember it as a horrible thing, right? But when the body responds to something that is overwhelmingly too much, or it happens so fast that there's no way to process it, or it goes on in over an extended long period of time, the body has a natural response that is all about survival. It does not care. The body does not care about um, the spiritual or the emotional or the mental aspects. It's like, oh, we're going to die.
Right.
We have to do these things in order to survive. So anything that is perceived by the brain and the nervous system as being life-threatening, life-altering, life-diminishing, life-deadening, those are the circumstances that can create this survival mechanism where the body says, that's too much. We can't process this. It's overwhelming. It's too fast. We can't process this. We're going to die. We have to respond in these ways. So trauma really is a body and nervous system response to something that is too much, too fast, or goes on for too long a period of time.
And do you think when you're talking about the threat to life, do you think that sometimes there's obviously literal expressions of that? I'm
Yeah.
under threat and duress. I could physically die here. Do you think there's also a more figurative aspect of that? So I'm thinking about, like, as a kid, right? Like, if I don't know that food is going to be provided to me, or if
Yes,
I'm not picked up and held, right, to a child, that can feel life-threatening or life-diminishing.
absolutely. Yes. Yes. And I think, two things can be, um, depending upon sort of the overlay of what's happening, right? Like somebody who loves roller coasters, they're in a roller coaster and they're excited, right? And that is not, they don't feel that's life-threatening. Someone who doesn't like roller coasters could be on a roller coaster and feel like, oh my God, I'm going to die, right? And if someone forces you to be on a roller coaster and you don't want to be, then that's traumatic, right? So it's not about the event. It's about how your body and your brain and your nervous system are processing or not processing what's happening. Uh, I mean, we all know that there are soldiers who go to war and they feel patriotic and they feel like they're doing their duty, and it's hard and it's painful and it's horrible, and yet they don't develop PTSD. And then there are other soldiers who go to war, they feel patriotic and they feel like they're doing their duty, but what they are experiencing is so overwhelming, they cannot process it. And that does lead to PTSD. So it's not about the thing, it's about how our body processes it, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think, one thing that I see with folks is comparing trauma, for instance. And,
Right.
and I see it actually from people devaluing their own traumatic experiences. This wasn't as bad as what other people have it way worse than I do. And I think one of the ways that we can extend compassion, not just to ourselves, but others, is understanding just what you're saying, which is it's not about the event or like the quote unquote validity of the event. It is how our body and mind receive the experience of the event and our capacity to process. And that's not a value judgment either. We're wired the way we're wired.
This is called Finding the Fragments. When I finally began to speak the horrors of my life, when I dared to say the words out loud to another and knew that they were true, I held myself, all of me, all the shattered, broken pieces, not glued together yet, just gathered. I held them in my hand and said, yes. The vivid memories of physical pain and unspeakable acts, hiding in closets of fear and sobbing in the neighbor's treehouse. I held those pieces and said, yes, I believe you, trying so hard to fit in with perfect grades and memorized Bible verses, with frills and lipstick in the perfect marriage to the perfect boy. I held those pieces and said, yes, I know you. When the perfect pieces fell apart and I fell into a shattering, cracking void, when all I could do was rock and shake and cry, I held those pieces and said, yes, I will hold you. Slowly, the heat and fire of pain and grief began to melt those shards into glass. I spoke the truth, and those who heard me joined me. Yes, we believe you. Yes, we know you. Yes, we will hold you. I picked up the blowpipe, took the molten glass of my life, and blew new life into what I could be, would be, always was, all along.
Love that. Beautiful.
Thank
Beautiful.
you. You wanted this poem?
To say that I believe that I have this one printed and in my journal next to my bed.
All right. So for people who are not familiar with the biblical story of Lot and his family, they lived in Sodom and Gomorrah, and the angel told them to come and leave because they were going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And the only thing about them getting to safety was they had to not look back. Lot's wife looked back and turned into a pillar of salt. The rest of her family marched forward, as they had been instructed, to find their people in a new land. I thought I could do this. Make a move, march bravely forward to find new people in a new land. But I understand now why Lot's wife looked back. Even though it was awful in Sodom and Gomorrah, even though there was not one other family who would welcome the angels, still, she knew what it was, what she was dealing with. She understood the silence she had to keep and the private knowledge she dared not share. I understand now how guarding secrets becomes destructive, killing joy and laughter. Habits of hiding are hard to shed, and secrets long held decay the soul. Spirit calls to me, come out of hiding, leave secrets behind. They no longer serve you. Set your face to the truth, to light, to freedom. I long to look back.
I think of the work of the soul as dedicated, as devotional, as a gentle commitment where you keep showing up and taking that time in front of the canvas or in the stillness or with the coach that you can say something to, a truth to, just showing up for the soul. I think that's the work.
That's the work.
Mm-hmm.
That's the work.
Mm-hmm.
It's just nurturing the soul in whatever way feels right.
Will you tell us, before we wrap up, I want to know about your work in shamanism.
Mm-hmm.
You are studying shamanism. I've worked with you in that way, and I think I want to bring this in because the soul, the idea of the soul, living relationally with the soul has been centered in communities and cultures since the beginning of time. And certainly shamanism teaches us that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was the arrival of a water buffalo that kind of kicked me off toward exploring shamanic practices. And it was also during COVID that this happened. So I did a lot of my initial study online with a shamanic practitioner in Calgary, Canada. The concept of shamanism is that everything is alive. Everything has soul. Rocks, grass, trees, ocean, shells, fish, people, even inanimate objects. There's energy, there's soul. And in shamanic practice, healing and wisdom and knowledge comes from drumming and from journeying to upper or lower worlds. We live in the middle world where there's a mixture of energies and where compassionate spirits reside here, but they're mostly residing in lower and upper world spirits and animals. And it's learning a technique of traveling, resting your mind and imagining yourself traveling to a lower or upper world and meeting guides, helping spirits, whether they're animals or ascended masters or people who have gone to the other side before us, and seeking their wisdom and healing. And it is really life-changing for me. It's really life-changing. Now, I would never call myself a shaman because I think shamans are people who are raised up within indigenous cultures for a particular role within a particular context. But the foundation of shamanic studies has developed over time through Michael Harner, the founder, and his wife Sandra, founded practices that are common across the board to shamans around the world. And those are the practices that I am learning and studying that bring me healing and that have brought other people healing as I share it with them. And one of them is soul retrieval, Katie. So that when we go through traumas, pieces of our soul actually break off. And so there are helping spirits who can come on a journey and help retrieve those and get them back into a person's body so that a soul gains greater strength
Yes.
and wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fascinated by it. I just, and I don't find it contrary to a religious belief system. I find it supplemental. It's both and. It's both and. And I love that.
one of the things that I guide about is like discovering what your soul language is, because for some people that's music, for some people that's stillness or nature or art. I know that for me, if I don't have enough, and I would say stillness, I don't know that it has to be quiet, but the stillness, the moving out of other people, of things that are required of me, places where I have to perform a role or take care of someone else or manage or be in charge. I need the stillness of that sort of clearing out and going away in order to deeply feel and connect into my soul. Once I do that, my soul is right there talking to me.
When did you learn that, Katie?
So it took a long time because I would say that a lot of my conditioning and a lot of my wounding brought me to a place where I was just a consummate people pleaser, constantly scanning the room and anticipating, and how do I avoid that discomfort or bring us to peaceful resolution or make people safe. It was like I was deploying my natural resources toward the wrong thing. Now, the wrong thing is because I had wounding that I hadn't dealt with, right? So it was okay that it was happening at that time. But it was when I got safe enough and I had done enough of my own healing work where I was really starting to identify just how, frankly, devastating the consequences of people pleasing had become in my life, and how far off path I had come in tuning into other people to feel safe, i.e., feeling like there were threats around me. And so as I started to, and this honestly probably was in the last 5 to 7 years,
Yeah.
that I really have, I would say, taken responsibility for this. So I always knew as a kid, like I would get home from school and I loved having homework because it gave me a reason and excuse to go be alone in my bedroom. And I would listen to music. Back then it was CDs, and I'd listen to entire CDs and I would do my homework. I was a really good student, but I would be alone. And I loved, loved, loved being alone. I loved listening to music and being alone. And there was a lot of theme in that happened in college too. I would often use homework and my studiousness as an excuse to be alone. I've got to go do homework. And then everyone would leave me alone. And then I would finish the homework and then I'd get to stay in that container. Right. And so I think this is another comment about you can look at your tendencies in childhood and sort of see where you were trying to get your needs met unconsciously. And then, so then I really did. I jumped into a life where I was really busy and smart and talented and doing all the things and busy and being successful. And then I became a mom, and the kind of mom I am. And that time alone was shrinking, and I felt like I was drowning. And I would say in the last 5 to 7 years, I've come to really respect that about myself. And I have held myself accountable for keeping myself hydrated and oxygenated, in that I know that I need time alone desperately. I cannot live without it. And I had accumulated a lot of patterns and tendencies, including people pleasing and overworking and being busy, in response to a lot of my wounding. And it was, not only was it unhealthy in response to my wounding, it was absolutely disconnecting me from my soul and from the truest part of me. And so now I will really stay accountable to myself and responsible to myself around when my impulse is to accommodate someone or please someone or take on another thing. I will pause now and say, can you really do this, Katie? And most of the time the answer is no. My life is still not balanced where it needs to be. It's just not. Some of that's the season of life I'm in. I've got kids, 10 and 13. But it is a goal. And in the absence of being able to sort of burn it all to the ground and restart, I'm trying to wind back these tendencies that I had that really have disconnected me But for me, when I get quiet and reduce the clutter of other people's energy and reduce the tug on me to fulfill a certain role, my soul is there talking. It's not that it begins talking, it's that it already is talking. And then I can process and catch up and feel and discern and gather the insights. I was absolutely the good girl. And I was totally tied in, like hook, line, sinker tied in to, if I am the good girl and I work hard, I will be safe and secure, mostly because people will like me and approve of me. I mean, I was in. And in my mid-20s, when, you know, a lot of this connection cracked open for me, and I really began to, frankly, I was like, what's wrong with me? What's going on with me? You know, and it led a few years later to my acupuncturist saying, I need you to do readings for a couple of clients. They're really stuck, you know? And I was like, no, I can. And I offered to do them for free. And then within a few months, they were sending me clients. And very quickly, because again, like life force, creativity, authentic expression, it has a gravity of its own. It will come for you and you can ignore it and it will cause you pain. And it came for me. And here I am, like by day, you know, doing all of the things that are acceptable to society and being really good at it. And then on the weekends, quietly doing readings in my acupuncturist's office for this growing list of referrals and clients. And within like 6 months, I needed to rent office space. And it became like there was this like force on its own. It's like the second I acknowledged it, it became big and it triggered all the things in me. And so here's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of, it may have been the summer after, because that was 2010. So it may have been the summer of 2011 or maybe even 2 years later. But I was getting to the point where I needed to leave my job. I had to leave my safe kind of corporate job to do what I do now full time. And I spent a summer, I made a list of 10 people. So this is not hyperbole. This is real. I made a list of 10 people. And at the top of that page, I read, these are the 10 people that if they stop being friends with me, it will break my heart. And I better grieve now before I jump into this new world. Okay. True dramatic Katie fashion. It's just that I feel all the things, right? So my thought had been, if I'm going to have to grieve losing these friends, these people I really care about, I need to know now, because I'm going to jump, I'm going to take this leap. And if these guys aren't with me, like that's going to kind of fuck me up and I got to get square. Okay. And you were on the list. And I called it my summer of coming out. And I went to lunch with each of these 10 people and I like confessed. I've seen dead people since I was 3 years old. This is the story. I know things I shouldn't know. Psychic medium. I want to help people. Spiritual woo-woo, you know, and then hold my breath and wait for the reaction. And, you know, I have compassion for her. I call her a girl. I mean, I was an adult, but I have compassion for her, right? Because like how tender and sweet. And like, also I just want to give her a hug and be like, oh, you got this. And in that experience, that summer of like confessing to these 10 friends, every single one of you in your own ways said, I'm here. I opt in. Most of you said, well, can I tell you about this weird experience I had? Like my grandmother's cabin at the lake is haunted, or I mean, people like started talking to me about deep things, right? And here's one thing, hang on for the story, I'm almost done. Here's one thing about that was in confessing or sharing, the thing I was most afraid of, like, here is my authentic self. I am leaving this tried and true, super successful corporate career to literally go be a psychic medium. That's what I'm doing. This is authentic and true. It's stripped down. If you decide to not love me, then this is the end of us because I have no choice but to go. Okay. So I'm in that place. And where every single lunch / conversation ended up, because I left those lunches knowing about someone's deepest stuff. Right. And so I think number one, the courage to say, like, here's who I am. that authenticity, and I'm using the word authenticity synonymously with creation, creativity, life force. Like, better or worse, stripped, if I lose everything tomorrow, this is who I am. It's just who I am. And when I stepped out and said that, I was super fortunate. I had some loving people around me, but I was prepared. Like, if people were going to judge me or dislike me or whatever, I was willing to leave that behind. But the risk brought me greater intimacy. And it gave me a sense of safety to keep going courageously on my path.
And it was an invitation to people to support you, but also for more people that you could help to come in. And if you don't put out that invitation, whatever it is for you, then, no one's coming to the party if there's no invitations, or, if you're trying to show your house, but it's not an open house, no one's coming in, And so, as you said, you start to feel that if you are closed off, to keep the analogy going, then you start to feel that, and it can manifest in really, really scary ways until you honor it. And the other thing I heard in your story was the support you got from everybody. And I am a big proponent of taking responsibility for oneself, absolutely, and for finding your peeps and, really teaming up. And I don't think any of us can do it alone. And, that has become more and more clear as well as I try to honor the truth in all of this, in this experience, that the first book was marketing with like a side of the human stuff, and it's feeling completely flipped, and it's the human stuff with the side of marketing.
Yeah.
I think that invitation goes at every level, and I started to notice it when in my agency days, going from being more what I thought felt polished and buttoned up to talking about the concert I was going to see and music. And go figure, the client or prospect wanted to talk about music first in the next meeting, and we were able to weave it into some of our projects more in places even that I thought it couldn't or wouldn't fit. And that was a small example as well of just that vulnerability and honesty and honoring of the creative interests.
And I think what you're speaking about, I experienced by eulogizing my father, because by that time I had transcended those details and I saw my father in a different light. So it was like how apropos that I would be here eulogizing the life of my father or my experience of my father as his body lay there, but I'm inside seeing him in his truest light, telling these stories to people who knew him but may not have known him as their father, and then at the same time honoring the expression that he came to this physical dimension to be, and the lessons he taught me in doing so. But it was a very transformational opportunity to eulogize my father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was at his funeral.
Yes.
And so what courage, right? Because what you're saying is you told the truth, that there was truth telling in that eulogy.
Yes.
And so what was that hard for you? And what was the reaction?
I think what I remember is that saying that to deny my truth would be to deny my experience of my father. And so in honor of my father, I am choosing to tell the truth about the experience of my father without negating who I know my father to be. And I led with a good memory of my father, because I shared that it's important for us to have good memories of the people who leave us, because it will be the only memory of the people who leave us. So I led with that, and I also closed with that. And in between was like, because no one's going to deny me that I experienced my father, dot, 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 dot. and no
Yeah.
one's going to deny me. And I felt like that inner child in me was able to have her voice, to have her say with his sisters and brothers, because my father was the first of his siblings to transition, as I understand, or one of the first. And so to be able to say that without any, like, you don't know what he did to me. It wasn't that. It was just like, no one's going to tell me this. I said, and that's not to the denial of the beauty that my father is. So I
Yeah.
kept linking it. I didn't
Yep.
leave it. But for those who had a hard time hearing it, they left there with distaste toward me and disdain to some degree. And Katie, that was okay because we need balance. Like that's not I don't need to make them see something the way I see it. That
Yeah.
wasn't the point. The point was like, I'm going to tell the truth and I'm going to put my father to rest in the highest possible light. And that is what I did.
In truth, right? Like
In
not in in glossing over, not in right, like not in only choosing those good memories. One of the things I'll tell you, one of the core themes of my work with people over the years, and it's reduced to this sentence, and I'm really fiery about it, is do not martyr the dead. I don't ever want to hear again, don't speak ill of the dead. I don't ever want to hear that. I want that gone. Because here's the deal. Being dead doesn't indemnify someone from what they did, right?
Oh,
And it is very hard to heal when someone has crossed and it was abusive and there wasn't healing when they were here. It is very hard to heal when you cannot tell the truth about what happened. Now, what you did was incredibly courageous, standing up in, a public family forum.
yeah.
People don't always have to do that, right? And that's why a lot of times with clients, I will say, I want you to no, tell me.
Yeah.
Tell me. And I hear like, oh, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, or like, he's going to be mad at me. No, like souls, that's like being in soul form is a totally different situation than being a human. And you can't get this out of your body. It can't leave you until you tell the truth of it. Thank you for joining me here on the Intrepid Soul Podcast. If you'd like to continue the conversation and the work of your soul, join me over on Patreon at the Intrepid Soul Collective. There you'll find tons of resources and support connected to the conversations we have here to help you make your soul work practical and embodied. There are live sessions with me, bonus Q&As where you can go deeper with me and my guests, companion guided meditations and ceremonies, and so much more. Because we can't just talk about it, we've got to become it. Check out the show notes for details and links, and hit follow on this podcast. It'll keep new episodes at the top of your feed, and it helps me build the Intrepid Soul community. Until next time, take good care of yourself and your soul.